Hello. In the last video we had a look at the structure of our data and worked out a series of transformations that we thought we would need to apply to it. So in this one I just want to follow up by making the connections. I'm not going to actually do any transformations in Power Query yet, that's going to be for the following one, but let's go through the connections we need to make one at a time. First we're going to connect to a CSV file, that's the one that contains the US sales data. Then we're going to connect to all of the international sales that are inside the folder for the international sales using Get Data folder. And then finally we're going to connect to the 3 tables of data that are stored inside an Excel workbook. Okay, so let's switch over then to Power BI at this stage. And we're going to click on the main Get Data button. Notice that it's got 2 parts to it. If I click on the top part of the Get Data button, I get the full list of all of the different data sources, a lot of them as you can see. If instead I click on the lower bit, then that gives me some common shortcuts. So actually we do have our text and CSV option there, but I'm just going to click on the main part. Okay, so I'm connecting to a CSV file. So I select that, say connect, and now I need to go through my system, navigate to the correct folder. I've already found it here. The dataset we want is inside the US sales folder and it's called sales.csv. So I connect to that one. And it now shows me a preview of the top of the file. As you can see, it says based on first 200 rows. If you think that the data might change lower down, then you can change that to based on entire data set. But with a big data set, that takes a little while for it to churn through all the rows. So I'm going to leave it at that. And now we have a choice to make. 2 buttons that we can use. If I click on load, it will load the data straight into the data model without opening the Power Query window. If I click on transform data though, that will then open the Power Query window and allow me to do some transformations. So that's what we're going to do. So now as you can see, it's opened the Power Query window on top of the Power BI window. Sometimes I find that when I open Power Query when I'm loading some more data, it opens the Power Query window, but it puts it behind the main Power BI window, which is very confusing because you think that it should have opened, but you can't see it. And what you have to do then, if you suspect that that's what's happened, is to go down to your taskbar and point the mouse at the Power BI icon, and then you'll see the 2 windows. And then you click on the Power Query window to get that to come to the front. Okay. Easy, we've connected to our US sales data, so now the next thing to do is to connect to our international data using the folder option. Now we've got Power Query open already, so rather than going back to the Get Data button on the Power BI desktop window, what I'm going to do is to use the New Source button in the Power Query window to start our new connection. So we get just the same kind of dialog box, and now we need to select the folder option so that we can tell it where the folder is that contains those 6 files. So now I do have rather a complicated data structure on my computer, so I'm going to pause the recording while I find it. So here we go, I've found the folder now. It's the international sales folder inside the data subfolder inside instructor or attendee if you're preferring to use that one. So I just select that, say OK, and then OK again. And now I've got a different kind of preview. What it's showing me here is the names of the 6 files that it's found inside the folder. And I've also got a different choice to make. If I were to click on the transform data button, it would just create connections to those 6 files, and I'd have to do the rest of the process of appending the different files to each other to make it into one data set myself, and that would be quite difficult to do. But the combine and transform data does a lot of the process automatically for me, so let's choose that option. So what it's showing me here is a preview of, as it says here, the first file. So it just finds one file in the folder and treats the structure of that as a template for working with all of the other files in the folder. So they do have to all be the same structure. Got to have the same headers, and within each column the data type has got to be the same in all of the files in the folder. Okay, so I say OK, and now it produces all of these intermediate steps automatically. It's slightly mysterious what it's doing exactly, but it ends up then with a combination of the data in this new query. It's added a new column on the left that specifies which file each row came from, and it's got a new country column which the US sales data doesn't have, so we noticed that when we looked at that in the previous video. So we're ready then to do some transformations, but before doing that, let's go and get the data from the Excel workbook. So again, I'm going to start from the Power Query window rather than from the Power BI window by clicking on New Source. I want an Excel workbook, so I select it, say Open. Now you might remember when we looked at the file, we found it had three different tabs, three sheets called Product, Manufacturer and Geo, and inside the product sheet was a table called Product Table. So the product information is shown here twice, once as the name of the sheet, once as the name of the table. Notice they've got slightly different icons. So tables have a blue top to them, names of sheets don't. So when you have a choice like this, always go for the table because it's going to be better defined. So I'm going to say I want that table, and then I want the data that's in that sheet and in that sheet, but I don't want another copy of the product information from the bottom sheet. And I just say OK. And it's done it. So now I've got my 5 different data sources that I can now do some work with. Okay, so now we're ready to do our transformations, and we'll come back and do that in the next video.